Hi everyone. So what I want to get into today is all about understanding your risk tolerance. So for a lot of people that are trying to make a transition in life, you get kind of stuck in this analysis paralysis. And so you seek out other advice. I think we all do that. And the advice kind of runs the gambit of like, you need to have a full replacement salary before you move on, or, you can just quit and you'll figure it out. And for most people, neither of those extremes are really all that helpful, just because they are an extreme on a spectrum. So I want to talk about how you can assess for yourself where you might fit on this spectrum so that you can better prepare for your next step, because then you can disregard the advice that doesn't really apply to you once you understand what you're comfortable with. So the first thing that I want to talk about are what we call the replacers. This is where I find that most of the advice or the guidance comes from. It's often from the financial industry. These people want to have a full replacement income in place before they're willing to actually cut over. And there's nothing wrong with this. It just means that they are low on the end of the spectrum for taking risk, and they don't want to experience a lot of discomfort. So they tend to plan and prepare very methodically. They're willing to take time to accomplish the transition. They may plan a year, 2 years, 5 years out in the future. Sometimes they'll stay longer than they actually need to in order to ease that transition and to be sure. So we would call these the replacers. They're on the very low end of the spectrum in terms of what they're willing to absorb for risk. And there's nothing wrong with that. You'll find a lot of advice out there for you if you fit into this camp. It's just knowing that it means that you're not looking at a transition that's going to happen in a year if you need complete replacement income and you're trying to do something that's like, you've never done before. You're probably going to need to have a longer timeline in your mind for making that happen. So then I would say that the next category that we would say that's still on the side of lower risk is what we would call the leaper. These are the people that have some savings, or they know that what they're going to go and do is going to have a sufficient enough financial safety, or they've got a bit of runway, meaning that they have, they have other resources that they can tap into. This is not guidance on whether or not you should be or do any of these things. It's just a decision-making tool. So these people often find themselves willing to take the leap because they are burned out enough that they're willing to absorb some of that financial discomfort should it arise. Meaning that if you are totally burned out in your job, but you have savings and you have some framework to actually make your next step, you would fit into this category. I think this is actually where a lot of people fit in, because a lot of people have more access to a safety net than they might want to rely on, but it's still there. And so I think this is where a lot of people that have gotten to a point of complete burnout end up finding themselves. Or these are also the folks that they turn like a layoff into an opportunity, because they do have that runway to make some moves but also absorb some mistakes or missteps if that happens. Fit on the needing high financial security or preparedness, but also they have a high urgency to leave. They want a timeline they cannot afford to have. I shouldn't say afford. They do not want to tolerate a timeline of 5 years, 2 years, probably even a year. A lot of them want to make a move faster than that. And I think this is a vast majority of people that have reached a point of burnout, but not everyone looking to make a change in their life falls into this category, because not everyone's at total burnout. If you're just realizing that this is not where you want to be in 10 years, you have plenty of time to make these moves and you might not fall into this category. So the other most common category that I think folks fall into is what I would call the bridge builder. These folks don't have the financial resources in place yet, or aren't comfortable with the level of financial preparedness that they have, but they also don't have to move yet. And so this is where I think, where I previously said if you're burned out, you would fit in the other category. This is if you aren't really burned out, but you definitely think that you want to do something different and you're still working out what that might be. This is where those people fit. And so I think that the two primary categories are the leaper and the bridge builder. And we'll get into the fourth category in a minute. But the reason I say the bridge builder is the other most common category is because these people are willing to take steps as they go. So they're willing to do the side hustle on the side as they build it. And while they may not need to wait for total replacement income, they definitely want to make sure that they have continuity in that pipeline of financial inputs before they're willing to be like, yep, I'm all in and I'm ready to go. And then the last category of folks that I think exist but are not common are the boat burners. And I think that this is actually a very, most of the guidance doesn't support this group of people at all. And these are the people that they don't internally need to feel that safety net or that security from being financially prepared. What they need is to get out of wherever they're at. So they have, a low financial preparedness, but they are high on the urgency to leave. And these are the folks that rely a lot on their own resourcefulness and their own grit, and they'll figure it out as they go. And I actually think that it's unfortunate because I think this population of people exists. I think they're far greater than what, traditionally we would assume, because all the guidance out there basically says that is a reckless way about going through your life. And so I think, there's not a ton of help out for these people if you feel like you're one of those people. I to some degree understand. I think I fit into the leaper category, but I can also relate to the boat burner category. What I would say about that is sometimes, and I want to acknowledge that sometimes actually having a safety net for a certain type of person can actually hold them back and keep them stuck. And that's because you get stuck in this, if you have a safety net, you become a little bit complacent and you're like, well, I guess I could go back to my old job if I maintain those relationships. So a lot of times, if your personality is the type that you really need to have a finite line of that was the old identity and this is my new identity and this is who I'm going to go be in the future, then you might fit into the boat burner category. And that's great. It's just really helpful to understand kind of where you fit in this spectrum so that you can sift through the advice out there, which we'll get into each of these categories, I think, in greater depth in a later video. But the goal of today is to just get you thinking about where you might fit in that spectrum of risk and the amount of risk you're willing to absorb in order to pursue a life that's different than you currently have and how long you're willing to take to get there. Based on that understanding, you can start to take another step. And it's going to be a different step depending on what that level of risk is that you're willing to absorb or that you have tolerance for. And the other key part of this is entirely an internal sort of awareness, because there is so much advice out there telling you what your next step should be, and it doesn't take into account that everyone is a little bit different. And so you may not fall into a category that someone else in your life, an influential person in your life, is going to understand. You just kind of have to keep that in mind when you're talking to people about your dreams and your aspirations and what your next moves are, that their level of risk, they're looking at it through the lens of what their level of risk is, as opposed to what might best suit you. With that, the next topic that we're going to get into is called mapping the work that you want. And I just want to say before we go, because I didn't introduce myself earlier, I want to thank you for being here. My name is Courtney. I created Desk to Dream to share what I've learned along the way in my journey to shift away from my desk job and to provide you with the resources to help you figure out how you can too. So if you like this sort of content, the first series is about 8 videos where we're getting into kind of just the high level, things that you want to start thinking about as you are figuring out what you want to do. And then we'll follow that with about 1 or 2 videos a week as we go along. I've never done this before, so thanks for your patience. These first 8 videos are going to have very little editing. I'm just trying to get them out there to get comfortable with the process. And then we'll delve into the process of the YouTube channel, of developing the YouTube channel and what that looks like, in case that's something that you're interested in doing for yourself as well. All right. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye.